Hi there, my name is Eddie Simon, and I would like to welcome you to a brand new podcast series called Be My Guest. I'm going to be featuring guests from around New Zealand as well as around the globe. And I'd like to invite you to come and have a listen. And I'm sure you'll enjoy it. My guests are very, very exciting and have a lot to share about the things that they do and the things that they're passionate about. So just kick back, relax, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you. Hi, and welcome to Be My Guest. I'm your host, Eddie Simon, and this is the first in a series of my new podcast. And today we are welcoming my very, very special friend and guest, Katherine Williams, for our first episode. So please, kick back, relax, enjoy, and here's Katherine. All right, and today we'd like to welcome my special guest, Katherine Williams. Good morning, Katherine. How are you today?
Good morning, Eddie. I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
So, listen, we've got the opportunity to be with you today, and thanks so much for your time. We just got a number of questions for this brief little interview in your travels around the world and such. You're busy, very, very busy person, and Katherine, you are the latest winner once again for the Photographer of the Year here in New Zealand, and that's so very, very exciting. So we're going to get to some of that and our questions, but tell us, where are you from originally?
I'm from Christchurch, so born and bred, Christchurch local girl, but I've spent a lot of time out of New Zealand too.
Oh, brilliant. Now, how old were you when you started this whole thing?
So I picked up a camera when I was 15, and I instantly fell in love with photography. I knew that's what I would do for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And very, very quickly, my high school teacher also recognised that I had a real ability in photography and recommended that I looked at pursuing that as a career. I was absolutely, wholeheartedly had the pursuit of that, and I knew that's what I would do with the rest of my life. That's brilliant.
So when you started at that young age, tell us a little bit about your journey from early days to where you're at now, just in some detail.
Yeah, so started photography at high school, and then from there I studied photography for 2 years at what is now called ARA. And so that was, very much exploring the practical aspects of photography. Whenever there was an opportunity to work alongside a real professional photographer, I pursued that. I literally would chase photographers down looking for the opportunity for some real work experience. So by the time I'd left study, I'd already worked for several photographers, both assisting and freelance work, as well as photographing some weddings and things like that. Then from there, the next year I spent doing a variety of things in photography. So once again, that was assisting freelance work, had some various subcontract work along the side. So just everything that I could possibly do to get a range of experience. And then that year, I also got a job working as a cruise ship photographer. At the time, I was 19 when I was hired, and I wasn't allowed to go till I was 20. So after my 20th birthday, I left to work on cruise ships. That was meant to be for a year. That was my plan, was to travel for a year. 9.5 years later, I finally settled back in New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, when we settled back here, my by then husband came and settled back with me. He's also a photographer. And we set up Tandem Photography. And Tandem has had a few different studio places, but we've been a very busy photography business in Christchurch since we set up.
Oh, that's brilliant, Katherine. Thanks. Now, obviously, through the years, you've had many, many experiences, and Maybe just tell us about a few of the most memorable experiences that you've had.
In photography? Okay.
Yes.
Oh gosh. So many experiences, and I think I'd probably like to draw on some of my more recent experiences.
Sure.
Instead of going back too far in time. And those would be my more current work. I'm working on a project called Being Human at 100. And it's a project that's absolutely dear to my heart. It literally, I did have this pivotal moment when this idea just came to me, and I just knew that it was mine. I just had to photograph these people. And through this project, I'm meeting some incredible centenarians. So that's people 100 or older.
Wow.
And I have so far photographed them in Vietnam, Costa Rica, Cuba, Australia, and New Zealand. And it's an ongoing body of work. And in my experiences, I'm both photographing and interviewing them. And I mean, it's incredible. I'm invited into their home. I'm given an insight into a life that I could never understand if I was just a tourist.
Mm-hmm.
And to be welcomed in that way, and then to photograph and represent them through photography is the most incredible experience ever.
Yeah, you would feel very, very privileged and honored to do that. I can just imagine,
Yeah,
And that is very, very, very special, isn't it?
Yeah, it is absolutely a real privilege.
Yes. So, have you lived anywhere else other than Christchurch? You've lived and traveled around the world. So, what are some of the other countries or places that you've lived or traveled to that you can share with us?
Yeah, so when I was working on cruise ships again, that was almost a decade of doing that. And during that period of time, I travelled to around about 80 countries. So I'm lucky enough to be very well travelled. In terms of actually, I was living in a shoebox, really. It was, you're living in a tiny environment. And although you're not living out of a suitcase, it feels a little bit like that. You're down to the bare bones of your possessions, which in some ways is really nice. It's quite freeing. But yeah, I went to many countries across different continents and had so many different experiences during that time.
Right. Why do you do this? Why do you do what you do?
Such a great question. I'm one of the lucky ones. So as soon as I discovered photography, I knew instantly that is what I wanted to do. So really for me, there's no question. For me, it runs in my veins. It runs through my blood. It's not doing it would literally be like not breathing. It's just something I have to do. I was born to do it.
All right, that's brilliant. That says it well. Mm-hmm. So, Katherine, I'm going to ask you, what do you think is the most challenging thing about photography?
The most challenging thing about photography is probably making a living, if I'm honest. People recognizing the value in what is a creative profession is challenging. And I think that I've just had to come with a lot of trust that if I finessed my craft enough, if I mastered my craft enough, and because I believe in what I do, and I believe that photography is one of the most valuable things that there is, both as a piece of communication within families, a piece of communication within news space, so that people have an understanding of what's going on in the world and other people. That if I believe in that value and I can project how I feel about that people will connect to that, and that's given me a sustainable career in photography.
It's brilliant, yes, and that's so important, isn't it? What do you think is the most exciting thing about photography for you?
Oh, I think definitely that no two shoots are the same. There's so many different people to meet out there, and it's always exciting. I love to think on my feet. I don't like to do anything that's production line, which was pretty much what I was doing on cruise ships. It was very boring production line photography.
Almost like cookie cutter.
Yeah, totally cookie cutter. But now what I do, it does change all the time, and I'm always meeting different people and being presented with different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to be able to think on my feet and just see things unfold in front of me, and then adapt to that situation depending on what I get thrown.
So how do you plan your days? I mean, from one day to the next, how does that go for you?
Well, really it's kind of, I forward plan my week to a certain extent. So I'll have, things that I have to get done. I'll have shoots or client meetings that are at specific times. So I'm looking to block periods of time out around those. But a lot of photography is sitting at a computer. There's a huge amount of editing and production time that's often not seen. And so those times, I am an early riser, so I'm usually keen to get, because I love work. So after I spend my time with my family, first thing, I'm keen to get straight into work. I'll usually spend a little bit of time with my children, with their activities and things in the afternoon, and then maybe do a couple more hours in the evening.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that's important, isn't it?
Yes, totally.
So now just tell us a little bit about the equipment you use and why you use that specific equipment.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I use Canon DSLRs. And I favour prime lenses just for their clarity and just, the quality of the capture is much sharper with a prime lens. So I have a 20mm, 50mm and 100mm prime in my kit, and they are my go-tos. I'm also a 70-200. A 24-105, a 16-35, and a 17-40. Have I missed anything out? Probably.
That's right.
Also, a recent addition is I also have a Nikon Z6 with a couple of prime lenses as well. Mirrorless camera, which I'm really enjoying using, much more lightweight. But it also does have the viewfinder, so I do feel like a proper photographer as opposed to just using the LCD screen, which I still find hard to get my head around moving to that.
That's right, and that's what we're shooting with today in this interview. So the mirrorless camera, they're brilliant.
Yeah, definitely.
The reason why I asked this question is because as we share this interview, there's going to be people out there, other photographers, that might want to know what you're using. So we thought we'd ask that, to share that.
And so maybe, as well, Eddie, maybe I'll also say about lighting.
Sure.
Because I think lighting's, obviously it's super important. A lot of the time, the beautiful natural light
that's right.
works fantastically. But I do also have Pro Photo lights.
Mm-hmm.
So they are fantastic lights that I can take on location and easily set up with modifiers on location, so they work really, really well. And we do have other lights, Bowen's lights that we use here in the studio also.
Right, because I know it's said that when it comes to photography, it's all about the light, really, isn't it? Totally.
I would say it's all about the light, but to me, it's also about the connection.
For sure.
So, you can take a great looking photograph of somebody, but if you don't have the connection with them, or they don't have the connection with the other people, then it's not a great photograph anymore.
Interesting article I just read, Katherine. And there was a test that was done. It was planned where they had an actor and 4 photographers. And each photographer was given a different brief as to the character of this actor or this person that they were taking a picture of. So he was said to be a fisherman to one person, an ex-con to another, and so on and so on. So every photo was different because all of a sudden they would create this image to reflect what they were told the person was.
Yeah.
And I think that's what your magic is that you do is you just are so instinctive in how you create your incredible photography. And I see that because I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
And it is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's an interesting social experiment, that one. That's for sure.
It is. Now, I know you said that your husband is a professional photographer, and do your children get involved in the photography?
They both do have cameras, so they have some great little compact cameras that still have the full manual control. So they're sort of gaining an understanding of how the relationship between shutter speed and f-stop and ISO works, which was really important to me for them to have the opportunity if they wanted to. They both have a keen eye for detail. My oldest daughter particularly, she does mirror what I do a lot of the time. So we were on the beach in Nelson recently, and she was lying down on the sand and she was looking through things and looking at reflections. And for me, that is a really important aspect of photography, is to see things the way that someone else doesn't. And that's, often a point of difference, is creating an interesting viewpoint that other people are not looking at.
That's right.
That's not their way of looking at the world, but it's my way of looking at the world. And so I think that people connect to that.
Well, myself being a photographer as well, and I've read these stories where you're driving along and you just see something you want to capture and, I missed that, or I can't stop because there's a car behind me, I can't pull over quick enough.
Yeah.
And those magical moments, but you got to remind yourself there'll be another time, I guess.
Yeah, and I think sometimes because you have to have your own visual diary in your head that exists beyond photography anyway.
That's right.
Because part of that is teaching you how to look at the light and how to predict what might happen next, and how to recognize where you might need to go. That's right. To capture those photographs.
Now tell us a bit about your countless and numerous awards and achievements that you've had in your career. I did mention at the beginning of this interview your most recent one, but perhaps tell us that and going back and what you've done.
Yeah, so I'm very, very grateful. I've done very well over several years in photography. So my awards in New Zealand photography have included Wedding Album of the Year, that was 2015, Wedding Creative Photographer of the Year, 2016, Wedding In-Camera Artistry Photographer of the Year, 2016. I also won New Zealand Professional Photographer of the Year in 2016. Wow. 2019, I've won Documentary Photographer of the Year, Portrait Photographer of the Year, and then New Zealand Professional Photographer of the Year. And I'm also a Grand Master of Photography in the NZIPP, which there's 17 of us in New Zealand, so that's a real honour to have that accolade as well. I do also get involved in Australian Photography Awards, and I'm a Master of Photography in Australia as well.
Those are absolutely incredible achievements.
Thank you.
One has got to be so proud, and your husband and your family must be very proud of you. I'm proud of you. And how you and I connected, of course, is because I saw you work on Facebook, and I contacted you, and we kind of went from there. And I'm glad that we were able to continue our friendship, and here we are today doing this interview.
Thank you. Actually, my daughter, my 12-year-old daughter, she's just started writing this beautiful diary, and in the diary she wrote, my mum is New Zealand Professional Photographer of the Year, and I'm so proud of her. And I just thought, wow, that's because I'm not married to my work, but I do love my work, so I do dedicate a lot of time to it. And so for me to be a role model that says, it is possible, even when you're busy with your work, it is possible to have enough balance that you are providing, you're being a good role model for ambition, and saying that it's actually okay to be ambitious, and that if you're in the pursuit of a life that is rich and fulfilling, then that's a great thing. And it shouldn't be, that feeling shouldn't be diminished in people. That's what I believe. So I was really pleased to see that she'd written that. It meant a lot.
And I think being a role model for your children is a very, very important thing. But you've also been a role model, I think, for a lot of other photographers, and you've certainly garnered such a great deal of respect from so many people, not only here in New Zealand, but I think around the world that have seen your work. And so where to from here? I want you maybe to also share with us, in saying this, where to from here, but also how people can follow you on a website or Facebook or whatever. You can maybe share that.
Yeah. So Being Human at 100 is an ongoing project.
Yes.
So I am looking for more centenarians across the world. So I'd love to hear from you if you do know somebody. So I have two websites. So I have tandemphotography.co.nz. That's where you can see my portrait work, my wedding photography and commercial photography. And then I have katherinewilliams.co.nz, and that is more of what I would call my heart projects. So that has Being Human at 100, and it has some other documentary type photography that I absolutely love to do.
That's brilliant. Well, Katherine, we're going to wrap things up with our interview today, but I just was thinking, if you were to encourage somebody in, I say words of wisdom or words of encouragement that you could pass on to other photographers or just in general, is there anything that you think you'd like to share in closing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for me, I think that you have to, if you feel that you want to be a photographer, then you have got to dive in head first, and don't listen to any voices that tell you that a creative path is not for you for any reason. And particularly, people who say, oh, well, you need to do a more financially viable career. And the thing is that this career is possible, but you have to really, really want it. And, in terms of mastering your craft, I think that's massively important. And that really comes from repetition. So it's, doing it again and again and again, and really gaining that knowledge so that it becomes innate. And, and then that'll hold you in great stead.
Brilliant. Well worth said. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our interview to a close today with Katherine Williams and New Zealand Photographer of the Year here in 2019. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Eddie.